Well, Penn State's new football coaching staff seems to be coming together quite nicely, but there's still a big question remaining. Who's going to be the defensive coordinator?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On College Crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. He is Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thank you so much for making us your first listen or your first watch every single day and making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network in the world. And we're talking Penn State coaching staff. We're also going to talk about Indiana and Mr. Heisman-Mendoza and if he's good enough to win a national championship, plus the college football playoff. It's finally here. We'll make our picks and predictions for the first 4 games coming up this weekend. And just to make a little PSA at the start, Zach and I are not feeling our best. It's that time of year. We
Give
are
us some grace.
under
a little bit of grace.
Weather. Yes, we are not sounding our best, feeling our best, but we are here for you and want to produce as much content as we can. And so, Zach, it seems like the Penn State coaching staff, Matt Campbell, of course, hired as the new head coach. Seems like almost every position is being filled except the defensive coordinator position. What's going on? Because for folks that maybe missed it, Jim Knowles is not in Happy Valley anymore. He's in Knoxville, Tennessee. So what's going on with the defensive coordinator spot for Penn State?
Yeah, and I wasn't opposed to Penn State possibly retaining Jim Knowles, that, hey, if you keep a good amount of the defensive roster, that Jim Knowles going into year 2, that his system would continue to be implemented. But I mean, Jim Knowles going to Tennessee. I'm pretty sure that Josh Heupel gave him a call. He's like, well, I can get my negotiated buyout and make money over at a new place and get a fresh start. Yeah, I'm going to do that. So I don't blame Knowles for leaving, and I don't blame Matt Campbell for not trying to retain him. So it's still a big mystery, though. Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? Everybody just assumed it's like, oh, well, John Heacock is following Matt Campbell. He was the Iowa State defensive coordinator. Well, then every report says role to be determined. Why is that the case? Because I think Penn State doesn't really actually doesn't have an official plan just yet. They're not trying to wing it, but John Heacock was contemplating retirement, that he was supposed to retire after the season, and Matt Campbell still is able to retain him on staff in some capacity. Is that as a senior analyst? Is it going to be as the defensive coordinator for 1 season, maybe 2, and then they pass the baton to somebody else? This is all still to be determined. So I'm eager to see what Penn State ultimately does. So they're kind of in a defensive coordinator search where they might have to make an outside hire, where this isn't a simple, we have somebody lined up ready to go, since John Heacock isn't necessarily, he might take the job. He might, but it sounds like he's going to be an analyst of sorts. Okay, so does that mean Anthony Poindexter, who's been the safeties coach for the past few seasons? He was one of the candidates to take over before Jim Knowles was actually hired. Brian Haynes was also one of those candidates, Indiana defensive coordinator. Just friendly reminder that how this went Penn State before they had a head coaching search. They had a defensive coordinator search.
Yep.
I'd be content with Anthony Poindexter calling plays. He's going to call plays in the bowl game. But does he? I've always heard, well, he doesn't actually want to be a defensive coordinator. He doesn't want to be a full-time play caller. He either wants to be a head coach or be a position coach in the NFL. So Penn State, I've already seen D'Anton Lynn. His name's being thrown around again. USC defensive coordinator. He's a former Penn State alum, Letterman. And that would be a home run hire. What his connection to Matt Campbell is, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. I would say it's very unlikely that they pull that off. But if you can pull it off, well, then Matt Campbell's done everything right so far. If you can get D'Anton Lynn as your defensive coordinator, that would be the best hire possible.
Looking at this from the outside in, because Penn State's not the only team in this position trying to hire, whether it be a head coach or being a coordinator, a position coach or whatever. I mean, from the outside looking in, it just seems like the longer this goes on, the worse it gets, because all of these teams and places, I mean, take any P4 team that's not in a major coaching search that feels pretty secure with their staff. Like, you feel pretty secure with your staff. You feel like they don't want to leave. You feel like they just got paid. You feel like they're trying to now work, of course, the high school recruiting and the transfer portal that opens up in a couple of weeks and trying to prepare for maybe a bowl game or even a college football playoff. Like it seems like for Penn State and a lot of other teams too, I don't envy it whatsoever. And Indiana's in a great spot, and knock on wood, we're in the position we're in, but I don't envy Penn State having to go through this and trying to find a defensive coordinator, and a good one at that, because I feel like the longer it goes on, the worse it is for the Nittany Lions. No?
Yes and no. I guess that, again, you have a contingency plan. John Heacock, you go with him. Or you've tried to convince him, say, just do it for a season, because I see
so he's the fallback then. He's the true fallback.
In my mind,
else fails. Okay.
That's my opinion. And that's not a bad answer. That's not a bad option. I think I can totally see that happening, where I've been pleased with the fact that Penn State, they retain Terry Smith. They keep him from going to Virginia Tech. Yeah, that's massive. That is massive. He's your associate assistant head coach. Okay, so he's your second in command. So you have Matt Campbell, and you now have Terry Smith, who's proven that he can help lead, right? That's two great minds leading a Penn State program. Yeah. But now you've added the best parts of the Iowa State staff. John Heacock is going to be on the staff, whether that's as a defensive coordinator or as an analyst. It's just a great mind in the defensive room. Okay, so that's a plus. Deion Broomfield, secondary coach. Pick anybody. Ryan Clanton, Taylor Mauser, all these guys are proven at their respective. Now I have questions about Taylor Mauser as an offensive play caller going up against Big Ten defenses, but I've been impressed that they've been able to bring over the best parts of the Iowa State staff. I probably should have mentioned Noah Polley first, who's the wide receivers coach, responsible for developing guys like Christian Watson, and Packers wide receiver Jaden Higgins, Texans wide receiver Jalen Noel, Texans wide receiver, Iowa State product that goes to the Houston Texans. But it's all those assistant coaches that were great over at Iowa State. You bring them over at Penn State, and then you retain Terry Smith, Dan Connor, Deion Barnes. So my idea when we talk about defensive coordinator, all right, Anthony Poindexter is an option. I don't think it's a likely one. I don't see it happening, and I would be surprised if that did happen. But if the blueprint is John Heacock does it for a season or 2 seasons, and then you pass the baton to a rising name like Dan Connor or Deion Barnes, linebacker and defensive line coach respectively, that's an option too. I mean, those guys have been really good at their respective positions. And there are those rising names that James Franklin wanted to get at Virginia Tech. Well, he didn't. So that's a testament to Matt Campbell, to getting those guys to stay on staff, because they're great. They're great.
Yeah,
so
that's a win.
There's not a bad option, but there are better options. D'Anton Lynn, how his name got connected to the Penn State job again, is that an agent trying to float his name and get some more guarantees at USC? Perhaps because the condition was that his family did not want to leave Southern California for State College. And I don't blame them in the slightest. It's LA versus State College. I know how this works. Sure. So if Matt Campbell is able to get D'Anton Lynn away from USC, wow, that is the hire of this cycle. Yeah. But I think it's more likely that you get John Heacock to call plays for a year or 2, and then have him ready to go to pass the baton to somebody like Dan Connor or Deion Barnes. I think that's the most likely option here. Or there's probably someone we're not even thinking of, and they actually open this up and do a comprehensive search, which very well could happen too.
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing situation in State College, trying to find the replacement at the defensive coordinator position. Another ongoing situation is Indiana winning football games and Fernando Mendoza being a Heisman Trophy winner, but people still doubting that he can win it all with the Hoosiers. We talk about that coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. This Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions is brought to you by Rocket Money. Ever feel like your money just disappears each month? It happens fast. A few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there, and suddenly the numbers in your bank account, they don't really match the numbers that are in your head. Rocket Money helps you get clarity, track every dollar, and stay in control of your finances, because managing your money shouldn't feel like a second job. Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save more and stress a whole lot less. Rocket Money finds subscriptions you forgot about that you've been paying for month after month after month, and they help you clean them up super fast. And I like how Rocket Money automatically builds budgets based on past spending. It keeps you on track without overthinking it. It just knows what you do, it knows where you spend, and it's going to help you formulate a plan to live your life. Okay, take control of your finances and cancel your unwanted subscriptions right now with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on-college. rocketmoney.com/locked-on-college. From the outside looking in, are you one of the people that thinks Fernando Mendoza is good, not great, that he maybe deserved or didn't deserve the Heisman, but he's not good enough to get Indiana to become national champions? Because I'm starting to hear that chatter from the outside, my friend.
No, and that's kind of the cool part about this conversation is I get to speak for the general public because by no means am I an Indiana expert, right? But looking at it, this Heisman race, I don't think, because we've been spoiled in the past by performances like Joe Burrow or Tim Tebow to that regard. Because when we're having this conversation, Fernando Mendoza didn't run away with it. And typically you kind of have that. It was a pretty even split. I saw a case for Julian Sayin. I saw a case for Fernando Mendoza. I saw a case for Jeremiah Love. I truly did see an argument for any of the four contenders there. But what you have to look at that point is that since it was such an even race, which team was the best? Which team was on top?
Yeah.
And that was Indiana. That was the best team. So you kind of have to factor that into team performance. And when it came down to crunch time, who was making the clutchest throws? Who was making the biggest plays in those kinds of moments? It was Fernando Mendoza. It wasn't Julian Sayin. Jeremiah Love, with, again, Notre Dame, if they won a couple of those close contested games against Texas A&M or Miami, it's a different story. But it was Fernando Mendoza who led them against Penn State, right? I saw that firsthand. So I got to see that, from a first-person point of view.
Maybe his biggest Heisman moment, the toss to Omar Cooper in the back of the end zone.
Well, or Big Ten championship game. It's when you needed a play, Fernando Mendoza gave it to you. So it wasn't just about him stat padding or that's basically it. It wasn't a situation where like, oh, he's shattering statistical records. It was those clutch moments. So I have a long story short here. I'm trying to get people to understand that I fully believe that Fernando Mendoza can lead Indiana to the next step, to an actual championship, because that's how he won the Heisman, by doing it every step of the way. When they needed a clutch moment, he delivered, not once, not twice, every single time.
And that's my argument, right? So that's kind of the outside perspective there. And I appreciate you kind of filling us in from at least your vantage point. But that's been my whole argument is, man, when are people going to stop doubting this Indiana team? When are you going to stop doubting Curt Cignetti? When are you going to stop doubting Bryant Haynes on the defensive side and Mike Shanahan on the offensive side? When are you going to stop doubting Fernando Mendoza, who just walked away with the freaking Heisman, right? I mean, it's the people that refuse to take the blinders off that IU is a good football team and a good football program. And what about Fernando Mendoza's performance? And this is an open-ended question here, is what about his play turns you off of him winning a national championship at Indiana? He makes the right decisions. He barely puts the ball in harm's way. I know he did against Ohio State, and he has a little bit down the stretch, but when it matters, he does not, and he does take care of the football. He has plenty of receivers to throw the ball to, and the running game for Indiana is working quite well. The offensive line is getting healthier, and we'll talk some more about that in a moment with injuries especially, but what is it about Mendoza that people don't like or don't trust? I can't see it. I genuinely can't. And I think it's a bad idea right now to bet against Curt Cignetti and Fernando Mendoza. I understand that Dan Lanning and Oregon are in the playoffs. I understand that Ryan Day and Ohio State are in the playoffs. I understand that Kirby Smart and Georgia are in the playoffs. But I think Indiana and Curt Cignetti, and especially Fernando Mendoza, belong in that same conversation, at least in 2025.
It just has to do with the fact that, again, Fernando Mendoza, See, this is the kind of podcast we're talking about here. So give us the grace. The situation is that Mendoza didn't have the stat line of a typical Heisman. Uh, Neither did
Yeah.
Julian Sand, neither did Jeremiah Love, neither did Diego Pavia. So it's kind of this, maybe jealousy is not the right word to use, but it's just this kind of, since we're in a season where everybody it's very close, but somebody has to win.
Yeah.
So Mendoza is the leader. Again, Indiana's the number one team in the country. Why you're doubting Kurt Cignetti at this point? Kurt Cignetti is one of the best coaches in all of college football. And you and I said
Yes.
that over the offseason after they beat Illinois the way they did, that there's no reason to doubt this guy anymore. So,
I mean, Mendoza's the best player on the best team, Zach. How else do you want to throw it out there, right? That's how I feel. He's the best player on the best team who beat the big bad Ohio State Buckeyes. What more can Indiana do to prove people wrong? I simply don't know. I will say, though, for people on the outside who maybe doubt Indiana as a whole from an injury standpoint, a big one that maybe not a ton of people heard about, but you definitely should, is Stephen Daly. Indiana's one of their key guys on the defensive line. He is third in the country in TFLs. He's out for the year. He got hurt celebrating the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah,
and
I
no,
saw
this
that.
guy, he wasn't out partying. He wasn't doing anything crazy. He was just high-fiving people. He was walking along the wall in the end zone and just jumping up and high-fiving people, and just came down awkwardly on his leg, and now he's out for the year. And folks, that's a big, big deal. That's one of your keys up front on that defensive line, and Indiana's going to miss him significantly. Again, tied for third in the country in tackles for loss. You can't make that up. Had a few big ones and a sack against Julian Sand in Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. And so Indiana injury-wise is okay. That one is a big one. But people trying to doubt Fernando Mendoza, who saying he's not good enough to win a national championship, I'm not going to buy it, no matter who Indiana plays in the college football playoff. But as we transition into our final segment of a Locked On crossover, don't look now, but the college football playoff is already here. And with 1 game Friday, 3 games Saturday, could we see a possible upset or two? We'll talk about that and give you our picks for all 4 games right after this on this Locked On crossover. This Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions is brought to you by Wayfair. The holidays always show up faster than we expect, and if you're still putting together gifts, last-minute decor, or getting your home ready for guests, Wayfair has you covered. Whether you need a quick room refresh, new bedding, or those final seasonal touches, Wayfair makes it easy to get what you need and get it fast. Wayfair truly is your one-stop shop for everything home, with decor, furniture, kitchen essentials, and gifts for every style and every single budget, all delivered quickly and easily. Their selection, I'm not joking, it's huge, okay? Bedding, decor, kitchen gear, kids' room updates, anything you need, they probably got it, and I was able to find everything literally all in one place. And the Wayfair items you order will instantly refresh your space without a huge big project and spending a ton of money on something you just don't know you're getting. Wayfair takes all of that hassle, all of that stress completely away. Get last-minute hosting essentials, gifts from all your loved ones, and decor to celebrate the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, final segment on this Locked On crossover. He is Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for being here and making this a part of your everyday routine. And Seyko, it is so insane to think that just a couple of weeks ago, we were watching the final month of the college football season, then championship week, and now here we are. The college football playoff is here. You have Bama and Oklahoma on Friday night, which, of course, Hoosier fans will be keeping an eye on, because the winner of that game will take on Indiana in the Rose Bowl on January 1st. And then Saturday, there are 3 games back to back to back. You have in order, okay, you've got the Miami Hurricanes and the Texas A&M Aggies. You've got Tulane heading to Oxford for a rematch with Ole Miss. And then James Madison flies across the country to take on Oregon in Eugene. Who's on upset watch? Is anybody on upset watch? There's some good spreads and some not so good spreads, according to our friends at FanDuel. So if somebody is on upset watch, who is it and why?
I guess I got to go with Ole Miss, right? Because of everything that happened with Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
I imagine the team will be motivated because Pete Golding seems like to be a guy that this current team has rallied behind, but it's still kind of a shock. And I feel like John Summerall and Tulane as a way to give him a parting gift of him moving on. I know these are two teams with coaching changes.
Yeah.
But Ole Miss was drama. And Tulane, there wasn't any of that. So there's kind of this, you're one final time you're fighting for your head coach. Look, I think Ole Miss still wins because just purely on talent alone. But if you're looking for who has the best chance at an upset, it is Ole Miss. James Madison, no shot against Oregon. I mean, well, but two coordinators are gone. You have no offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, right? For this Oregon team. But come on, out of the Sun Belt against a Big Ten team. And remember, these
touchdown underdogs, Zach.
Remember, these aren't neutral site games either. These are at their respective stadiums.
Night game in Eugene.
Oregon is going to actually it's not going to be pretty. It's really not. So this goes back to, look, somebody should have been in, whether it was Vanderbilt or Notre Dame. James Madison didn't play anybody else with a pulse this season. And those kinds of things need to be factored in. It's not all schedules are equal. Well, they won their conference title. I don't care.
Yeah.
Look at who they play. If you put Notre Dame in that conference, they would have went 12-0 and steamrolled everybody. So I'm not trying to shill for Notre Dame here. I've already given my 2 cents on it. It's the college football playoff as it is right now, they got it wrong by really favoring these smaller conferences here to get these two teams in. And I think we're going to get a nice little reality check here when Oregon blows out James Madison. But Tulane should give them a little bit of a fight. I think John Summerall's a really good coach. I think this Tulane team is talented. And Ole Miss, it's kind of a matchup setting because I don't think Tulane would have as strong of a case against any of these other teams. It really has to do with what Ole Miss is going through, but Ole Miss still by talent alone is probably going to win. So let's break down these games.
I'm with you on that. And we won't waste a bunch of time on the Oregon James Madison game. And we could start with that one, just going top to bottom in the bracket, because that game should not exist. That game shouldn't happen. No. I'm sorry. It shouldn't. I'm with you on that 100%. Good for James Madison for getting there. They've lost now their second head coach in a row as he's going to head out west to LA. But you're going to get a reality check here. You said it. You're going to get destroyed in this game. And even if the scoreboard at the end of it, Zach, isn't a 21 or more point win for Oregon, because that's what the betting line is, according to our friends at FanDuel, it will be a dominating performance by the Ducks. They may score a late touchdown or two, James Madison, that is, to make it look a little prettier. Oregon's going to win. They're going to put 50 plus on James Madison because they can. They'll pull those starters by the fourth quarter, and that just shouldn't happen in a college football playoff game. So I like Oregon. I'll take Oregon like 52-10 or something. I mean, it's going to get really ugly. Saturday night in Eugene. Give me Oregon to win. Give me Oregon to win big.
Shutout might be on the table here.
Yeah.
I could see something 42-0. This is definitely a Oregon wins by at least 5 touchdowns. I will go 42-7. Oregon over James Madison.
Okay, we move down the bracket. Again, we've got the 9 seed Alabama heading to Norman to take on the 8th seeded Oklahoma Sooners. A rematch, one of the two that we have in the first round, as Oklahoma went to Tuscaloosa, beat them by a single score. Now Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, who's having to waiver off coaching searches again and waving off rumors about going to Penn State first and now maybe going to Michigan and all of that. And there's a lot of drama there. But in terms of the game itself, you're talking about two teams who are in the 100s in terms of running the football. They are both atrocious in that category. And I don't think either quarterback is healthy, to be quite honest with you. And I think Norman's a tough place to play. It's Friday night. The fans are going to be fired up. The winner of this game gets the Indiana Hoosiers. I will take Oklahoma. My gut tells me Alabama, but I'm going to pick Oklahoma because they're at home. They're favored by about a point and a half, depending on when you look at it. So I'm going to take Oklahoma to make one or two more plays, Ty Simpson to throw an interception, and the Sooners to move on to take on the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, the key is going to be turnovers because that's how Oklahoma beat them the last time, because they were +3 in turnovers.
Yep.
So, and they still only won by a little bit. So objectively, the better team is Alabama. If Alabama can limit its mistakes, then they can beat Oklahoma, whether it's in Tuscaloosa or in Norman, Oklahoma. I do believe Alabama's the better team. You bring up a good point. Nobody's really healthy. Nobody's healthy to this point at this point in time.
Not even us.
Yeah, exactly. But this might be the I want to frame this appropriately because I'm just really excited for this game. I think this is the Alabama Oklahoma. Whether it's because it's a playoff game in Norman, this is probably one of the closest spreads we're going to see, or one of the closest projected games that we're going to see.
Interconference matchup also.
Yeah, it's an SEC matchup with the conference realignment and everything. Alabama and Oklahoma, this is definitely the best game of the first round. It might be the best game until we get to the championship itself. And that's what I'm trying to get at in terms of, big plays, momentum swings, all that stuff. Yeah. Alabama and Oklahoma might be one of the games that goes down as the best in college football playoff history, just because of how contentious it's going to be. I will take Alabama since it seems like the rumors are starting to quiet down. I will take Alabama to get revenge because I just don't anticipate them turning the ball over multiple times again. They win that game with one less turnover. Okay, they turned the ball over 3 times against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma still barely beat them.
Yeah.
So if they limit those turnovers, Alabama can win this game by maybe even 2 scores. But give me Alabama, somewhat decisively. It's still going to be a 1-score game, but Alabama comfortably.
I think we both have Ole Miss to beat Tulane, but it sounds like, based off what you said and what I think, Tulane could keep this interesting within 17 points. I agree. I think Tulane covers. Reminder, this is a rematch as well, where Ole Miss hosted Tulane in week 4 and lost, and Ole Miss won 45-10, but Lane Kiffin was on the sidelines. That's exactly right. I like Tulane to cover. You do as well, but we both like Ole Miss to win. And now we move into the final game as we wrap up the show. And this is the game that I think is the most intriguing of the first round. Miami and Texas A&M, because I don't trust either one of these teams, to be quite honest with you. I don't trust Mario Cristobal or Carson Beck, and I don't trust Texas A&M and Marcel Reed because of their schedule, plain and simple. And I think Mike Elko is a great coach. I know you do as well, but these two teams have good defenses. They break down at times. 2 quarterbacks who, when they're on, they're on. When they're not, they're simply not. And I'll take Texas A&M to get it done because it's in College Station, but I don't feel good with that. And the spread is super, super close on this. But give me the Aggies to pull it out with a late Marcel Reed touchdown and to pull away and eventually go on to play Ohio State, who might beat them by 20.
Home field matters. And I'm not so sure about that. Remember, I went on last week and said that Ohio State would be susceptible to an upset by either of these teams.
You did.
Because Ohio State can't run the football. They're talented, but Texas A&M especially would be able to would not be the ideal matchup for the Buckeyes there. So we'll see how that holds up eventually. But I like Texas A&M being that they're an SEC team. They, you get a little bit of a reality check by losing to a Texas team. I actually think that helps them more than it hurts them. Just like, oh, okay, we're not, we need to make sure that we cover all our bases here. Miami of Florida. I don't want to put too much stock into a game where they lose to, again, you're losing to Louisville, you're losing to SMU. You play some other close ones. I know that, well, Texas A&M schedule's not that strong. You did play in the SEC.
It's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the same thing kind of applies here. Texas A&M won all those games in the SEC except for Texas. Miami won most of their games in the ACC except for SMU and Louisville.
Yeah.
I don't know that Carson Beck is that good. If we're taking coach versus coach, so you got to default. Who has the better coach? Texas A&M by a mile. Mike Elko is a much better game day coach than Mario Cristobal. Yes. When it comes to quarterback, Marcel Reed is a much better athlete. He's a better quarterback. He's just a better game manager than Carson Beck is, especially because Carson Beck can self-implode to where he's throwing 4 or 5 interceptions in a game. Marcel Reed does not do that. So I'm going to take the quarterback. I'm going to side with the quarterback that doesn't self-destruct. That, okay, you might have a bad game, but you're not going to have a terrible game. Carson Beck can do that. So give me Texas A&M comfortably by 2 scores.
And that is the first round of the college football playoff. Excited to see it. Excited to see who moves on and if there are any upsets or not. And then we get to talk about that and preview even more games this time next week. He is Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Make sure you subscribe on either and both, actually, of our YouTube channels. Follow us on both of the audio podcasting platforms, right? Spotify, Amazon, you name it, we're there. Make sure you never miss a moment of Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Hoosiers. We are back for another episode tomorrow, fans. So until then, stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.